Dear respected Thầy, dear Sangha, today is the 11th of April 2021. We are in the Stillwater Meditation Hall in the spring day of mindfulness. From the last winter retreat, I had the opportunity to sit by next to the cushion of Thầy, and that opportunity gave me a lot of happiness. Every time I enter the meditation hall, I join my palm to bow to the Buddha, recite the Gatha, and then I bow to the cushion of Thầy, and then I sit down. And that moment gives me a lot of faith, a lot of gratitude. I am aware that Thầy is not here physically. He's in the root temple, but his energy, his practice, his insight, his peace that he generated for Upper Hamlet, in Upper Hamlet, through a few decades, is still very strong here and still very cozy. And this meditation hall witnessed a lot of high venerables, brothers and sisters, practicing sitting meditation together, sharing together the practice, and realized a lot of efforts on the path of transformation. So every time I sit down, I sit with that gratitude. And every time seeing a cushion of my siblings that has a label of indisposed or Sangha service, I also feel very grateful, because and I see that brother is present clearly. And every time on the cushion, that is without filling up by that brother, without the label of indisposed or Sangha service as well, I feel a little bit like something lacking of something. And every time I am not able to join the sitting, I try to make to ask someone to put the label of indisposed or Sangha service on my cushion. And I see it is something beautiful we can offer the Sangha, whether we are not able to be in the meditation hall physically. Sometimes my health doesn't allow me to do that, but we are mindful enough to send our energy to the Sangha, saying that we put the label there on our cushion to demonstrate that our wholeheartedness, our wish to join the sitting. We don't want to miss the opportunity of joining the sitting. But out of some certain reasons, we cannot be there physically. That's why we want to send our wish of joining the sitting, being present for the Sangha through that label. So the aspiration of generating the joy, the happiness, is still there in the meditation hall. Even though we are not able to join physically, it is something very beautiful to me. As he called it as Dao Phóng, the monastic culture, the monastic habits. If we are able to keep this habits, it's a chance for us to open up our hearts and learn. So every time I see a brother and sister, a brother who cannot join the sitting, but he asked someone to put the label there, I feel very, very grateful. And I can see his aspiration to join the sitting in the morning or in the evening. Every time I do the morning sitting, I try my best to offer my presence for myself and also for the brothers who are not able to be there. Because I know that living in a sangha, there are certain brothers that I cannot be present for them all the time out of language barrier or other things. But I feel like sitting is a time that I can really see and offer my presence for them. And I can see that sitting is a time for us to look back and transform the negative feelings in us, where we can easily find the island within ourselves. Sitting next to Thei's cushion, I benefit a lot from his energy. He's the one spending his whole lifetime to realize the fruits of transformation for himself, and also dedicate that fruits of practice to life, to people who are suffering, for the world, for people who are lonely. And this energy, I feel that it is being penetrated. And sometimes I do feel that I feel sleepy, kind of being in the suckiness. And sometimes when I'm sleepy like that, I with the kind of awareness that Thầy was sitting next to me and reminding me, and I said silently to myself, "I'm sorry, Thầy." And I also enjoy his acceptance, his his understanding for my mental state at that time, at that moment. I would say that there are times I enjoy very much the sitting, but then also there were times that I had to struggle a little bit. And to me, it is obvious, it is understandable. Our practice sometimes it is very effective, very perfect, but sometimes it's stuck a little bit. I just want to preserve that ups and downs, and that's called kung fu in the in the monastery. Kung fu is something that we keep maintaining it. We don't give up. Kung fu is something we dream of doing it and doing it continuously without being postponed. And that continuity sometimes is up, sometimes it's down, but we try to keep it, we try to maintain it. We are not ambitious to gain more, and at the same time we don't get down while we don't practice well. And our practice is with moderation like that, is balanced like that, and we can slowly move forward in the depth of our practice. That's how we maintain the culture in the monastery, the monastic culture in the tradition. Brother Nguyên is in Vietnam at the moment, and he just answered an interview about Thei's calligraphy exhibition in Vietnam. He told me that the exhibition happened beautifully, very cozy, and helped many people enjoyed lifting a few pages in Thei's books, or enjoying looking at the calligraphies of Thầy. But they also got transformed a lot. Being in that space, they transformed themselves. They could touch what is the true happiness. In that interview, Brother Nguyen also told me that the exhibition that happened in Ho Chi Minh City also presented the last calligraphy that he wrote before he got sick. It was written on the 15th of October 2014. It was like almost 1 month before Thầy got sick. Thầy got the stroke. Thầy told us, Thầy Pháp Nguyên told us when he before 1 month he got stroke. Somehow his one of his ngón chân là gì em? The toe, one of his toes somehow could not move, and he saw like the toe next to that toe was still moving. Thầy felt very happy because Thầy could see the happiness that happens by being aware of the other happiness conditions that are available, while one condition is being suffered. Thầy was 88 years old at that time. Thầy was able to be happy with the very simple conditions of happiness. Many toes could not move, but just one toe could move. It could bring them great. It could bring him great happiness. And that last calligraphy that Thầy wrote is one toe moving, and that was Thei's last of Thei's calligraphy writing. To me, it is something very deep. The happiness is something very deep. His practice was very deep. Thầy could find the very simple joy, but very deep. Being able to, Thầy was able to show people the very simple but very deep joy and happiness. Very profound. But sometimes we can move every part in our body. We can run normally, but we cannot recognize that is a great happiness for us. That is a very precious gem that we are holding. We're holding in our hands. We are owning. When we lose that condition, we suffer. We get depressed, or we get really down, and we are not able to realize the other precious gems, the other simple joy. They travel here and there to bring about transformation, healing, and joy to the world. But at the same time, Thầy never forgets. Thầy never forgets, neglects the happiness generated by simplicity in his daily life. That is the lesson that I am still wishing to receive and process from Thei's legacy. Living wholeheartedly with the Sangha, practicing wholeheartedly, being present wholeheartedly with the Sangha is something I see in Thei's life. During this time, we are very lucky that while the world is facing with a lot of difficulties and obstacles caused by the pandemic, but for us, it could be the time to investigate more in our practice. The Buddha's teachings left for us, they are very deep. We sometimes feel that we don't have, we wish to have more time to go deeper in this legacy, in this inheritance, right? So we can spend our whole life, to spend the energy for the whole life to discover. When we are able to go deep in teaching, we will see that how rich we are. We see the diversity, the richness of of Buddha's teachings, we will see what is the most essential for us as a monastic, so that we can have more faith to develop, to deepen our practice. Our capacity of dwelling will be reviewed quite clearly during this period, while we are facing with the things that are happening outside and also things that are happening inside of us. How we face with them, how we practice with them, it will tell us how deep in our level of practice, as we are able to deal with things inside of us. In the Plum Temple in Hue, I was in 2003. I was still a novice at the time. I used to bike up to the temple to hang out with the brothers there. Whereas I was sitting in the tea house, I read two parallel verses in that tea house, and I found it very, very interesting. The Venerable, who was the abbot of that temple, inspired our teacher a lot to ordain in the past. And that Venerable was the one Thầy paid a lot of respect. And in Plum Temple, our teacher also spoke about
and I saw two couplets. Two couplets written in Sino-Vietnamese. I read it once, but then I remembered it forever for many years after. The verse on the right. Bần cư não thì vô nhân vẫn means a poor person. Even though we are in a very noisy city, vô nhân vẫn means also means no one. Vâng is to ask, so no one asks about our health. No one asks about how we are doing. So a poor person who lives in the city without anyone who is not paid attention to. A poor person here, I think, means like a person without many belongings. A person who is simple. Phú tài tâm sơn hữu khắc tâm means a person who is very rich. Even though they live deep in the mountains, there's still people that come to find them. Bần cư não thì vô nhân vẫn phú tài thâm sơn hữu khắc tâm. Although if you're a very poor person and you live in a big city, no one will come to visit you. But if you are a very rich person and you live deep in the mountains, then although you live deep in the mountains, but there will be people who will want to come and visit. And the word bang, the word poor here, if you split the character in Chinese, the bottom, there's the word boy, means a treasure. And at the top is the letter 8. 8 is the number 8. And so you divide this treasure into 8. And you divide this treasure into 8. And the word fu, which means rich, at the top there's a roof, and underneath there's a character for person, and then underneath there's a character for food, and also for a rice field. So if in a house there's a person who has a rice field to eat, they are to eat from, to cultivate from. They are so-called a rich person. And bang, the word bang is although you have treasures, although you have something to use, but you only use, and you have nothing to cultivate. And fu, the word fu, a richer person, means a person that has a place that they can make business. They can make uh, their their money. They can get more money, become wealthier. The word fu is very interesting. In the word ding rung, we have a word called tam dia. Tam dia means the state of mind, our mind. The base of our mind, the earth of our mind. The earth of our mind is very, very deep. It is there's no bottom to the earth, and we can investigate deeper and deeper into this vast earth, this deep earth. There are very many seeds. Suddenly one day, these seeds, they manifest, but before we never knew that they existed, and that is an opportunity for us to look deeper into our mind, into the earth. When we look deeply into our five skandhas, then we have the capacity to do so. If you look deeply into your five skandhas, you can see what is the true nature of this life, of this world. Last time we heard Thầy gave the Dharma talk about the man who tried to walk to the end of the universe, the end of the world, and he went for a lifetime and lifetime, but he could never reach to the end of this world. But the Buddha said, with this body of the five aggregates, this body of the five skandhas, and if we use it to practice, then we can realize awakening in this very life. We understand that our practice is very rich. And we hear that sutra being taught by the Buddha. When we're here to practice with each other, to investigate into our five skandhas, to look very deeply into our five skandhas, one day, suddenly you will see that you're so rich, you're so wealthy, and we don't need to seek in the north, seek things in the south, in the west, to run. And truly all we have to do is just look very deeply. And the Buddha calls this Kung Fu. Kung Fu is the cultivation, the practice. And we leave more time, save more time for ourselves. We put aside more time for our practice. In every step that we take, when we are working, when we have a meeting, we can always practice to cultivate our Kung Fu. And even through difficulties, we can also practice our Kung Fu. We invest into our practice. And slowly you'll see that we're so rich, we're so wealthy. The opportunity for us to study and learn even deeper the Dharma doors, the teachings of the Buddha, the teachings of our teacher. And we will see a poor man who lives in the city, although he lives in a big city, but no one will ask for him or will speak to him. Because sometimes when they ask us how we're doing, we don't know what to say. When they ask us about our practice, about the Dharma, we don't know what to say. Master Kui Sheng said, we're like a wall. And in Vietnamese, the translation is u u kak kak. So you just sit there and you don't know what to say because you have no practice. And I feel like when I don't have the, I didn't, I wasn't able to invest in my steps in my practice. Then when people ask me questions, I answer them based on my intellectual knowledge more, and based on my feeling at that moment more than actually based on my practice. And even though we live deeply in the mountains, but if we're someone who is wealthy, who is rich, if we have something that others want to come for, then they will seek us even though we are living deep in the mountains. So don't worry. We don't have to worry. We don't have to wonder why. How come we don't have any guests for us to take care of? How come we don't get to... Sometimes when I sit on the question and answer panel, I think it's almost like the opportunity for myself to ask myself questions, to look and reflect back on my own practice in order to make my practice have more depth day by day. The word learn in the Buddha's teachings, or the word study, the word hauk, is very deep. The word hauk, it has the meaning on a secular level. It means we imitate or we learn after. We have the word học giỏi, học đòi in Vietnam. In Vietnamese means you try to imitate, you copy something. And the second meaning of the word học is you want to understand. You want to grasp the essence of something. For example, we are studying about the verse Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva while looking deeply into the five skandhas, into the insight that brings us to the other shore, saw that in nature they are all equally empty. And when she realized this, she was able to overcome all of her sufferings and afflictions. And we learn, what does the five skandhas compose of? So this is called learning. In the Buddhist terminology, there is a term called vang tuệ. Vang tuệ is the insight that comes from listening deeply, investigation through deep listening. And how also means to practice. Handri means to do it, to do whatever you're studying. In the word tam vô la học means the three studies, the three types of learning that are not leaking. It means for us to investigate. Sometimes we see that Thầy, he teaches really simply. Every book talks about come back to yourself, come back to your breathing, come back to your steps. And we read it so many times that we feel bored, we feel tired of it. And we have this sense in ourselves that we want to find something newer, we want to find new ways of practice, Dharma doors, things that don't exist in Plum Village. We have this desire, this need, because we feel like after 5 years, 6 years of staying in Plum Village, we think we've learned everything. But actually, for myself, the meaning of studying and learning within myself is still very limited. And this is what I can see myself in when I walk, when I work, when I sit during meditation. I can already measure how much my learning is at in percentage. How much have we done? How much have we gotten? And when we see we have still a few weaknesses, then we know that our learning has not been completed. And the things that we are learning here in Plum Village, it belongs to the heritage of Thầy, heritage of the Buddha, because currently Thầy is our teacher. And it is a very big heritage. If we didn't investigate, we didn't try to explore this heritage of Thầy, then it is quite a pity. If you study Sino-Vietnamese or you study classical Chinese, and you're able to break down the characters, you will feel that it's very interesting. It's like when I showed everyone the word "fu," I felt very, very happy when I was able to break down that word, and it gives us the motivation to learn, because we want to learn the meaning and how the characters are composed. For example, our own Dharma names. When we go home, go back to our hammocks, we can try to find our Dharma name in classical Chinese, and then try to learn the components of that character, because classical Chinese or Chinese is based a lot on pictures, and our ancestors have tried to put together the characters in such a way when we look at the characters we can understand the essence, the meaning of the characters. And one really interesting word is the word "đức," is virtue, like sister, true virtue. You see, the word "đức" is written like this. "Đức" is written like this. This is called "bồ sức." It also means to work. And this is the character of number 10, and this is the character of eyes. So 10 eyes equals the majority. And after beneath, there is a character that means the number 1, and then underneath there's a character that means heart. So although there are 10 eyes and many people, but they have one heart, they have the same aspiration, the same ideal, then everyone can coexist in harmony. And we have the term, the Buddhist term, Đức chúng như hải, means the virtue of the Sangha is like the great sea. And when we study, it can be very interesting, and we see how the characters are composed and they're put together. Sometimes if we don't have enough time, then we can learn for fun. In Thailand, I saw a young sibling learn classical Chinese, and I went by and I was like, "Wow, you're so young, you're so wonderful, so good." And this younger sibling replied, "Oh, I just feel so stressed, so I'm learning Chinese to help me relax. And so learning classical Chinese can also help us bring us joy and help us relax. The practice of the Buddha's teachings are condensed and are put together in a very concise way in the 37 factors of enlightenment, or 37 factors of awakening. 37 different factors that help us practice. It supports our practice and it supports our path. The first is the 4 right diligences, or also called the 4 right efforts. And the second is Tự Như Ý Túc, which means it could be translated as the 4 bases of mental power, or in this discourse it says the 4 bases of psychic potency. The third one is the 5 spiritual faculties. The fourth is the 5 powers. The 7 factors of awakening. And the Noble Eightfold Path. And the final one is the 4 establishments of mindfulness. When I studied, I restudied the 37 factors of enlightenment. I made a very interesting discovery that they all have in common. The 4 right diligences, of course, they speak of diligence. Diligence that we have in our practice. And in the 4 bases, the 4 bases of mental powers, there is one that is based on right effort. And in the 5 spiritual faculties and the 5 powers, there is also, they have right diligence. In the Eightfold Path, there is also right diligence. And also in the 4 establishments of mindfulness, although it doesn't concisely say there's diligence, but the spirit of practicing the 4 establishments of mindfulness is to practice with diligence, with right mindfulness and awareness. This is the way, instructional way, the essence of practicing the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and it is extremely related to diligence. And I invite the Sangha, when you have time, you can look deeply into the 37 factors of awakening. You can see that this is the source of energy, of power that can support us in our practice, in our lifetime career of transforming our suffering and nourishing our joy and happiness. The factor of diligence is very, very, very concisely taught by the Buddha, and he put it almost in every factor, every group of the 37 factors of awakening. All the good seeds that are already in ourselves, that are already existent. For example, we have the seed of really wanting to practice, really wanting to sit in meditation, to walk in mindfulness, then a practitioner will find the way or find every way possible to try to maintain, to persevere in his practice, to maintain this seed and all of the good and wonderful seeds that we can discover in our brothers and sisters. Although we don't see it manifest in ourselves yet, but we find every way possible to help it manifest. And all of the negative seeds, the not so good seeds, for example, the not so lovely seeds like anger or jealousy or blame or criticism or judgment, if they have already been given rise to, then we must practice in such a way where we will let those seeds sleep deeply again in our consciousness. And we practice in such a way that we let it sleep for a long, long time, and we don't allow it to come back up. And that is the diligence that we should practice. And this factor, Thầy used a different term, which is mingmak, which can be translated as a perseverance, in uninterrupted diligence, perseverance. It means there's no stop. It's continuous. Ming means it keeps stretching far and far. It lasts and it doesn't stop. It's not cut. Like a door, when you shut it closed, there's no space for wind to come in or come out. And this can be called perseverance, is another term for diligence. And this perseverance, this continuous effort, it helps all of the seeds that are down here be looked at with mindfulness and allowing it to arise to the mind. There are many seeds from the stored consciousness that can rise to the mind. There are good and there are bad. There are good good ones like love, support, understanding. We want to find a wholesome, a good direction for our Sangha. And also there are not so lovely seeds inside of us. And it comes from our past. It comes into the present and it buries us deep in our suffering, buries us deep in our difficulties. And we have to find a way to help it sleep soundly in our stored consciousness. And this very practice of perseverance, of diligence, will help these seeds to sleep. Because we can see that, because we can hear that, because we can feel that. It touches the seed of anger in our stored consciousness and it rises to the mind consciousness. Because we listen to that song, because we hear what that person says, these words, these sounds, these beautiful things go into our ears, and it touches, through the ear sense, it touches a seed in our stored consciousness, and something beautiful is manifested at the level of mind consciousness. And our practice needs to be continuously maintained. I see there's one practice that is quite fun. that we can practice together. Instead of writing our kung fu book, then at the end of the day we can draw a circle like this, and then we see inner store consciousness at the time of the day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. We try to call the true names of the seeds that manifest, and we can draw them. For example, oh, the rice today was so good. We make a little note, and it goes up. It makes us really happy. We can write, oh my gosh, the rice was so delicious. And then another one goes to the top, another seed. For example, we see a younger brother or sister who's walking really, really fast. And we say, oh, how come your practice is so strange? And we don't know why our younger brothers and sister is walking fast, but automatically our perception of them, we have worry. We are worried for their practice, so we can write worry. And that's all. We just try to call awareness to our the seeds that are in our store consciousness that have manifested. And if there are more good ones, and we understand that although there are good seeds and bad seeds, it's just we just have a mere awareness of them, so we can draw a smiley face next to the circle. And sometimes our elder brothers or elder sisters or any sibling in the sangha, they have an idea or they have an opinion that makes us really, really angry. How come it doesn't go along with the harmony of the sangha? How come it doesn't make any sense? At night when we go back to our room, we can reflect on it. We can call up this seed of anger. And I think this is really interesting, because some mental formations, when we sit down and we write them, then we can really be aware that they're there. But throughout our day, sometimes it arises, but we don't have enough mindfulness to be aware of it and to call it by its true name. For example, we're walking like this, and for no reason, the image of our father or mother appears, and they're holding a stick, and they're shouting at us, shouting the things that they were shouting at us when we were young, 15 years earlier, and it makes us suffer. But when we practice awareness deeply, mindfulness deeply, then we can really touch the seeds. We think that it's over already, but actually it needs more of our care. So we can write being hurt, and we don't judge, but we just become merely aware and call that seed by its true name. And I feel like I have a lot of joy when I practice this, sitting still and discovering the seeds that have slept in my store consciousness for 10, for 20 years. My mom said something that I thought I'd forgotten, but then when I sit down and I reflect, then it comes up. Our younger brother or sister says something, and 3 months later, it manifests. So be aware. And this awareness, if we use it every day, continuously, then we will have the capacity to dwell in the present. And that is the second way of practice in Plum Villages, the present moment. We have the ability to be still in the present moment and to really be aware of what's happening. And the second is to live happily, lakto, to live with joy, to dwell with joy. These are the three very, very basic teachings that we can study for our whole entire lives. Sometimes we help our mother, our father, and so many people by opening retreats. But now in this coronavirus period, we're feeling down because we don't have the chance to serve, to help. And during that time, we feel very bored in the sangha, and we say, "There's nothing to do here." We know that our dwelling in the present moment, the capacity that we have of dwelling in the present moment, we understand how deep it is, whether it is shallow or deep. We know ourselves through our own practice. And I also nurture my practice by this right diligence each day. Thầy also spoke about right diligence in the 6th mindfulness training in the 14 mindfulness trainings of the Order of Interbeing, which is speaking, loving speech and deep listening. I vow to practice right diligence to nourish my capacity of deep listening, to recognize the nature of interbeing. So we remember we practice right diligence with a mind of non-discrimination, with a heart that can embrace everything. Sometimes we want to be. Sometimes we want to turn us into a Superman. We want to turn us into a person who tries to throw this out of our life and pull this into our lives. And in the end, we just end up fighting with each other. And when we understand how skillful our practice is, at what level our practice is, then we can understand, oh, maybe we should practice the basics first. Sometimes for those who have a lot of feelings, and some people, when they're stuck in a feeling, they get washed away by the feeling, like in a river, how the current just pushes a person down and downstream. But we can also get on the bank and just sit on the bank and watch our suffering flow by with just mere awareness and dwell happily. And that is a process of cultivation and a continuous effort of Thầy. He didn't get it in one day, but he had to go through a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulties, and a lot of difficulties in his youth. I see that the practice of right diligence in a continuous and interrupted way is something very difficult, and we are very easily carried away by our feelings, and also to be buried in our mental formations, especially in meetings. It can be very stressful when you hear a lot of opinions that are going against each other, and you hear different opinions coming from different places. We have to practice a lot, and for myself, I try my best to practice in those kinds of meetings, and I feel like I lose a lot of energy, but I try to maintain myself by sitting still and following my breathing. And when I follow my breathing, I can also try to follow the things that are happening in the meeting. But we do not lose our anchor. We have our anchor, which is our breathing. Especially when there are meetings where my name is mentioned in the meeting. And so then our breath can go down to our abdomen and allow my brain to be spacious, to stop all my thinking. Maybe during those meetings we have very good ideas. We have very positive ideas. Or maybe it's just an opinion that comes from our feelings. Or it's an opinion that has the function of bringing benefit to ourselves. When we sit there and if we just embrace the Sangha in our perception, we understand the Sangha in this stage is currently like this. The environment is like this. So we can put together all of these different opinions into our mind. But our mind is not being carried away, not being taken from our past, from our own views. And it comes from the aspiration of us wanting the whole Sangha to move forward, for us to find a balance. And we know some things we can speak maybe 5 months later or 6 months later. We have the opportunity now to stop and to listen very deeply, to bring out to share in a very beautiful way. And this practice of diligence, it helps us to become unilateral. I don't know what that means, but it helps us to open the places where we are stuck first, to take care of our own 5 skandhas, our feelings, to be on good terms with ourselves first, before we look outside. That's when we shut all of our doors and we just come back to our little home. Walking meditation is a way for us to come back. Sitting meditation is a way for us to come back. And there are a lot of brothers in Upper Hamlet who really like to do landscaping, and it helps them come back. And some brothers like to cook, they like to help in the kitchen, and that helps them come back. We come back. And this continuous effort of coming back to ourselves, it's in every text, every sutra, every discourse that we practice and study here in Plum Village. Like the discourse on the 5 ways of putting an end to anger, the discourse on the island of oneself. Although in a meeting, the Sangha is the one who makes a decision. Although in the Sangha, that person will be taken care of by the rules and the regulations, the policies of the Sangha. But our job is to generate compassion and love in ourselves. Firstly for us and also that person. The person who is is being spoken of in that meeting. We need to open our hearts to embrace. It's very important. We don't know what their future is like, but we can already see our future. Our future is being covered by a very thick layer of darkness. I heard this Lower Hamlet sisters say in the Lotus Pond this year they have a very thick layer of algae, and so the brothers helped the sisters remove this layer of algae, and then a couple of days later the sisters saw that they're like baby lotus leaves that were coming to the surface. And when I went to Lower Hamlet, I could see that this is reality. Our mind is like that. When it's covered by a layer of our past, of our suffering, of our difficulties, if we have the opportunity to break, to remove that covering, to wear off that covering through days and days of cultivation and practice, some sufferings that are 20, 30 years worth of suffering. How we think, how come we've already practiced for 7 months and 7 days already, but there's no result? We come back and to dwell in this continuous effort, and to liberate ourselves, to make ourselves unstuck. And we're so lucky. We're lucky more lucky than so many other people, because we have a path in a sutta that is the Anguttara Nikaya. There's a discourse. There's a sutta called the Sutta on Development, and the Buddha also teaches about diligence, and he uses the image of a chicken, a mother chicken who has 8 to 12 to 10 eggs, and after she lays the eggs, she holds that she hopes that the little baby chicks inside of the eggs will make their ways out, will crack open the egg by using their beak, by using their fingernails, by using their toenails. But the mother hen doesn't incubate the eggs, but she leaves the eggs and she goes and wanders around and plays. So if there's no incubation, no constant supply of heat to the eggs, then the chicks will never be able to crack open the eggshell. And if the mother chicken, although she didn't give rise to this hoping that her children, the baby chicks, will break themselves out of the eggshells and come into life, but she incubates them every day, then whether or not she wishes it, the chicks will still be born. The chicks will still hatch from the eggs. So although we have this want, this dream, this aspiration to complete our study, our process of awakening, but we don't do something to develop ourselves, then there's no result. I would like to read for you Discourse on Development. Bhikkhus. When a bhikkhu is not intent on development, even though he forms the wish, may my mind be liberated from the taints by non-clinging, yet his mind is not liberated from the taints and non-clinging. For what reason? Because he lacks development. He lacks development of what? Of the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the 4 right strivings, the 4 bases for psychic potency, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 powers, and the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Noble Eightfold Path. Suppose there is a hen with 8, 10, 12 eggs that she had not properly covered, incubated, and nurtured. Even though she might form the wish, may my chicks pierce their shells with the points of their claws or beaks and hatch safely, yet the chicks are incapable of doing so. For what reason? Because the hen had not properly covered, incubated, and nurtured her eggs. So too, when a bhikkhu is not intent on development, even though he forms So too, when a bhikkhu is intent on development, even though he does not form the wish, may the mind be liberated from the taints and non-clinging, yet his mind is liberated from the taints and by non-clinging. For what reason? Because of his development. Development of what? Of the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the Noble Eightfold Path. Suppose there was a hen with 8, 10, or 12 eggs she had properly covered, incubated, and nurtured. Even though she might not form the wish, may my chicks pierce their shells with the points of their claws or beaks and hatch safely. Yet, the chicks are capable of doing so. For what reason? Because the hen had properly covered, incubated, and nurtured her eggs. And I discovered this text, when I discovered this sutta, I was very happy. Because in the Sangha, I saw that we are like hens who are laying eggs. And we don't have to ask when we are going to attain enlightenment, when we'll become a patriarch, when we'll become a sage. But we have the practice in a continuous way. With right diligence, through each day we can see our progress on the path of practice, if it's increasing or decreasing. And I know that in the Sangha, everyone has the capacity to self-assess themselves, self-assess their practice. And each time when we sit, each time when we walk, we have the opportunity to look deeply at our practice. And I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to stay in Thai's hermitage and attend Thai. I remember one time all of the brothers and sisters were pushing Thai's wheelchair so then Thai could enjoy the scenery. And he stopped at a plant vase, and he made us all stop, and he kept pointing. He kept pointing at the plant vase. And when we looked at the plant vase, we could see that the leaves are beginning to wilt. They were yellow. And Thai basically wanted everyone to change the earth that is in the pot. What he did was he put his hand on the earth and he grabbed some dirt. So we asked him, "You want to change the dirt?" And he nodded his head. And he touched the pot. And after that we asked him, "Thai, is the pot too small?" And he nodded his head. And especially when we understand what he wants to say, he's really, really happy. And during that evening, we went to New Hamlet to ask for some new dirt that we could put on. And after that, Thai went to assess our work, and he pointed at the water, and he made sure we watered it exactly the amount of water that it needed. And whenever Thai goes to Sangkap, Thai also visits this tree. He always visits this tree. And not long after that, the tree, the leaves became green again. And each time I go to the hermitage, or the brothers go to the hermitage, we see this tree, we feel so ashamed. We feel so ashamed because it's our job to know what's going on, to take care of the plants. But Thai was the person who discovered it. And not long after that, we were able to put the tree outside, and each time we push Thầy passed by, he would touch the flower and he would look at it, would enjoy it very wholeheartedly. And one evening, we we stood under the shades of the pines, and Thầy asked us to pick some flowers. And then Thầy would take the flowers and he would smell the flower, and then he would try to make everyone smell the flowers. And Sister Dao Ngim was there, Sister Phùng Ngim was there, Sister Thung Khan was there, and Thầy gave the flower to each person and made them smell it. And even the attendants. And Sister Chang Kong is a person who doesn't know how to. She doesn't really have a thing with enjoying scents. But she said, "Tai Tai, I want to smell too." And when Tai gave the flower to Suko, her face like beamed, it glowed like the sunshine. That evening for me was something legendary, and everyone was able to feel the presence and the capacity of Thai's mindfulness, and the way that Thai was able to touch life. When you go to Shankap, you'll see the jade orchid. The jade orchid is still in the hermitage, and there are still many flowers. And Thai was one who saved. He saved that plant, the jade orchid. He also saved many other plants in Plum Village, and told our brothers and sisters how to properly take care of them. So now when I go to the hermitage, I always visit the jade orchid. When I see a flower or a new bud, I feel like it's a baby Buddha. If we practice continuously with right effort, then all of the seeds that manifest in our mind, manifest through our actions, will be seeds that are wholesome, that are good. And like the Buddha, we will be able to sit on a beautiful lotus, to transform all of our negative seeds into positive seeds. And during this time when I was an attendant, on one day it was raining, something like today, and it was my turn and Thầy Đồng Tri's turn, and it was raining, so Thầy didn't go outside, but Thầy was sitting there, and he was looking outside of the window. Sham was sitting inside, and the attendant was making some tea for Thầy, and Thầy sat there to admire the jade flower, jade orchid, and Thầy really enjoyed it when we retold the stories of his life, or retold the stories of the great masters like Master Tăng Hoi, or we read discourses for Thầy. Those moments for me are moments that are very legendary, and maybe we will have very little opportunity to have that opportunity again. And although Thầy is here today, he's still with us. We don't know when Thầy is going to leave his 5 skandhas body, when he's going to leave his form body. When our loved one is still there, when our teacher is still there, when our brothers and sisters are still there, then we should look deeply to see the most beautiful things of our siblings. And in the end of the day, at least we still have our teacher, at least we still have our brothers and sisters, we still have someone we love, and that is a very valuable gift for us. But remember, we can lose all of this in an instant. We can lose these things in an instant. But if in the present we know how to cherish it, then when things are impermanent, when things aren't like they are like now anymore, then we don't have any regret. When we take a step deeply. It's not in the future. It's not in the future, but it lives in our store consciousness. Whenever we need to call on this breathing, call on this walking, then we have the capacity to bring it to the surface. And each day we have the chance to live in this kind of environment, and we have the chance for these baby Buddhas to be born inside of us every day. We allow each day for at least a couple of tiny baby Buddhas to be born. The Buddha, the world-honored one inside of us, and let him grow day by day. And invest, study it, receive the heritage of the Buddha and Thầy. Thank you, Sangha, for listening deeply.